Good morning and welcome to the Lakers Lowdown. I'm Anthony Irwin. Today on the show, well, what a weekend, right? Not much in terms of actual basketball for the Lakers. They last played on Friday, but you did get a big addition to the roster. There might be some more potential changes coming. I'll answer, probably the most pervasive question that I've gotten over this weekend. We also just watched the Kansas City Chiefs beat the San Francisco 49ers. Me being a Dodgers fan who hates everything about the Bay, I like the outcome. Avery also got some donut money that I'm sure she's going to enjoy. Uh, I thought within that win, the Chiefs kind of sort of like the whole time that game was going on, I had a very specific Lakers thought. So we'll talk about that. And we'll preview a big week ahead as the Lakers look to integrate their newest addition, Spencer Dinwiddie. All of that and whatever else comes up here in a bit. All right, so let's start with the weekend, recap it really quickly. Again, we haven't seen much basketball since last Friday. The Lakers, it's really funny how this kind of worked out. It was totally coincidental and a big kind of advantage here for the Lakers as they had a full weekend. Yeah, LeBron was away from the team, obviously, to go watch the Super Bowl, but Spencer Dinwiddie was able to get into the facility and work out a little bit, start to meet with coaches, and coaches could really start to identify a role for him. You had potential opportunities for some tape and whatever it was that was needed to be done. The Lakers were able to do that without having to mold that schedule and work that schedule around a game here and there. So that was a big deal. And by the way, as you guys are listening to this on Monday morning, the Lakers are going to have their first official practice with Spencer Dinwiddie, with everybody there in the building, and that is nice to be able to get under your belt before you head on over to your first game. I said win. You see that? If you guys are watching on YouTube, you saw my lips form win. But your first game this week on which doesn't come until Tuesday. So yeah, it was in terms of recapping, there isn't really a ton to really talk about that we didn't talk about, whether it was on Friday or let alone on Saturday when the news actually dropped. Ever since then, anytime I basically tweet anything, I have been asked about what might come next and stuff. And as it stands right now, I'm recording this at 11:47 Central Time on a Sunday night, and as it stands right now, it does seem to feel like the Lakers are. This is kind of sort of the roster, unless somebody else becomes available. I do think that they want to see this group get a shot together. Yeah, you do risk potentially losing out on one or two of these potential free agents that you could add to the roster. I have made the case over this weekend to bring in Marcus Morris. I really like the idea of adding his physicality to this group. But as it stands right now, when you look at the guys on this roster who you would have to, because the Lakers would have to cut somebody, right? Jackson Hayes has played really well lately, and the center options out there, especially now that Bismack Biyombo is not on the market anymore. He is an Oklahoma City Thunder. So the options out there is like Robin Lopez, but he looked pretty washed this year. And there aren't a ton, So I think the Lakers would probably prefer to keep Hayes and Wood on their roster. You could maybe cut Cam Reddish, but with Jared Vanderbilt not probably coming back this season, and that continues to be the situation there. It was funny to see people jump to conclusions about that situation with Jared Vanderbilt, and say, well, he's going to be reevaluated in 3 to 4 weeks. That's way different than what you reported. And I'm like, it isn't. It's just a reevaluation, and we'll see what the new information is whenever that time comes. Rob Pelinka, I thought very interestingly, didn't say that, uh, Jared Vanderbilt, they're looking at a potential return date. To this point, he's excited that Jared Vanderbilt, to this point, has avoided season ending surgery. Uh, you know, if you, again, look, I want to be clear. I would love to see Jared Vanderbilt this year. I think he's a very important part of this team and allows you to do some interesting things with your backcourt. And I think the Lakers are really going to miss him. But all I can continue to do is relay the information that I have to you. And to this point, there is still quite a bit of pessimism that Jared Vanderbilt is going to come back with the Lakers. So uh, if you don't have Jared Vanderbilt, that leaves Cam Reddish as like your best option to guard bigger wings. And I don't think the Lakers want to waive him just for some potential physicality from Marcus Morris. And then, the other thing that does matter here is that if they were to waive any of those three players, that all three of them have player options, which, like, Rob, what are you doing? Like, if not offering a player option means that you don't get Jackson Hayes or Cam Reddish, then you don't get Jackson Hayes or Cam Reddish. You don't need to attach a player option to those guys. What are you doing? Anyway, uh, those player options, though, are going to wind up mattering here, and I believe that the Lakers will given the buyout market as it currently exists, they seem likely to uh, just consider this their roster. And you know what, I get it. I think we always like the idea of tweaking here and there, and we're always looking for what comes next, as we all exist as like pseudo GMs in our own minds. But the Lakers probably consider this their roster right now, and I think it makes a little bit of sense. You want to see what it looks like, especially whenever Max Christie comes back, whenever Cam Reddish comes back, and you want to see what that rotation looks like before you cut somebody while they are hurt and never see this roster on the court together. So as it stands right now, when you guys are asking here at the very, very top here, which is right there, if you guys are watching live, more free agents to come. As I'm told right now, doesn't seem like it. It doesn't. These things do change quickly, and maybe the Lakers do kind of change their approach here. But I think they would like to see a game here to see what they need before they cut some guys who might provide some of what they need. All right, the next thing I wanted to talk about here, completely changing subjects, is that win that the Chiefs were able to pull off against the San Francisco 49ers. Incredible game. Went to overtime, right? Such a fun game there. And I think we continue to see Patrick Mahomes just really make a pretty tough case, especially at this stage of his career, for the greatest of all time. He's got a long way to go, and he's got a lot already accomplished to this point. And this was supposed to be the toughest year of his current contract to be able to, like, to be able to pull this off. And they just won back-to-back Super Bowls. And as I'm watching that game, all I kept on thinking is, like, man, wide receiver core not great. I think they miss Eric Bieniemy. Uh, San Francisco, clearly the more talented team up and down that roster. Uh, the Chiefs defense certainly deserves their flowers, right? Steve Spagnuolo appears to be one of the most underrated coaches like I have seen of my lifetime. I think that the Chiefs, given some of the disadvantages that they were working with, did just enough to allow Patrick Mahomes to be great. And that I think is the bare minimum of what organizations owe their best players, is give them just enough to give them a chance to elevate your organization. That's the bare minimum. That's the absolute least that those guys can offer. And in Mahomes' case, because he's in his prime, the bare minimum get you Super Bowls, right? Just like with LeBron, the bare minimum get you NBA championships. With Steph Curry, the bare minimum makes allows you to compete for NBA championships. As guys get older, in LeBron's case, right, that margin for error has shrunk. So that means you have to clearly get him more at this stage of his career than you needed to get him, say, in the second stint in Cleveland, which I think was like the best basketball that LeBron ever played. And, and that's like, the obvious variable here is like the teams that you're competing against, right? And in this case, like that San Francisco 49ers team is just stacked. Like the fact that they were able to add Chase Young just for peanuts at the end of that season there at the deadline. You have that wide receiver core. You have Christian McCaffrey doing obscene things with the football, whether it is catching or running. I know Brock Purdy is a hot topic, and he will always remain a hot topic, but he's at least good enough, I think, to, I don't know if he's necessarily good enough to win a Super Bowl. He played well enough today to do it. Problem is, eventually you're going to run up against a Patrick Mahomes, because he's just kind of inevitable in the sport right now. And I think that with Mahomes in this contract right now, to me, the true way you define greatness at the position of quarterback is what is that quarterback? What does the team look like once the quarterback gets paid? Are you ever nervous about paying that quarterback, right? And the great ones, doesn't matter. They're able to make it work back when they were on their rookie contract, and then they're eventually able to make it work when they are making the big bucks and you don't have as much to spend across your roster. And that would be my concern here with the Niners, right? I don't think Purdy is due to be paid, so it doesn't necessarily matter all that much. But that window is closing the closer that you get to him getting paid. And in KC's case, right, the fact that they paid him and it kind of sort of cost them Tyreek Hill, right, and it costs you other talent across your roster because you are playing in a capped sport. The math here, this was not supposed to be the season that they won the championship. Like, it just wasn't supposed to be. And yet they went out and did it. And like, as they're doing it, playoff game after playoff game after playoff game, you're watching Patrick Mahomes just keep on telling anybody who bets against him, why'd you do that? Like, that didn't seem very smart. And you know that KC organization, I think they'll probably have to add, I think Rashee Rice is going to get better this upcoming offseason, right? He's not going to be a rookie anymore, so he's going to likely improve. You're probably like, Kadarius Toney is no longer going to be a thing. Mecole Hardman, Valdez Scandling, I think his name is. It's not the sport that I cover or whatever, but like those guys are probably going to get swapped out or whatever, because his Patrick Mahomes cap hit is going to be lower next year than this one, and that margin for error now like opens up a little bit. And good God, what does that mean for the NFL next season? And I, it's just like, as I'm watching all of this, and as I'm thinking about what the Lakers continue to do here with LeBron James and Anthony Davis and sitting out that trade deadline, I know that they got Spencer Dinwiddie, and I know that the vibes are better now than they were, say, Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern when that deadline had come and passed, and the Lakers opted not to do anything. But it's still just kind of, it just feels kind of like a bit of a gut punch. LeBron James is the greatest player of his generation. Period. I don't think you can really argue it. You could say maybe Kobe came before his generation, and you could say maybe Jokic is coming after his generation. But like for the time, from the time that LeBron stepped onto the court for the first time as a rookie to now, until whenever it is that he hangs him up in that generation, LeBron is far and away the best player that laced him up during that time. And all that you needed to do with him over the course of his career is just give him an opportunity and put him in a place, in a position to succeed in the postseason, and watch what happens. And last year the Lakers did like the bare minimum. They finally traded Russell Westbrook. They finally surrounded him with some shooting and with some athleticism. And look what happened. He somehow kind of like miraculously takes you from play-in team to Western Conference finalist. And yeah, you wind up getting swept because the current best player on planet Earth, Jokic, is at his peak right now. And that team built around him is like perfectly put together. So yeah, you do wind up getting swept, but that's what LeBron was able to do with the bare minimum, a berth to the Western Conference finals. And if you just do a little bit more, maybe you compete a little bit better against Denver. If you do more than that, maybe somehow you beat Denver, right? The Lakers chose not to move their second first round pick last season after moving Russell Westbrook, telling everybody that they were going to move it in the upcoming summer. And then instead of moving it in the upcoming summer, they draft Jalen Hood-Schifino, who hasn't done a thing for LeBron James this year and these Lakers currently this year. And again, it's just like that is less than the bare minimum is what they chose to do there this season, right? The Lakers have chosen to do less than the bare minimum, and we'll see what that winds up with. Maybe the LeBron is still just good enough to win you a couple play-in games, win you a playoff series, and allow some of these people to keep their jobs, but they shouldn't, right? Like if that's what it comes down to, is that like you did less than the bare minimum. You chose not to resupply him with a little bit of talent at the deadline, and he got lucky with Spencer Dinwiddie. Like that to me is kind of it doesn't sit well with me, right? And we saw the Lakers previously do whatever they could for Kobe on at the end of his career to try to win him a championship. They brought in Nash, they brought in Dwight, um, and maybe that season was just damned as soon as Steve Nash, hurt his leg, and maybe that like run was just damned because even Dwight wasn't 100% that season. He was coming off of back surgery, never really looked like himself. And you brought in Mike D'Antoni, and maybe that was a misstep as well. Instead of bringing in Phil Jackson, who I thought that roster fit better for, and maybe things just didn't work out there. But you went down swinging, right? You gave your all time great one more opportunity there to win you a championship, and then it just wasn't meant to be. But in this case, I'm going to feel like the Lakers left stuff on the table by not doing the bare minimum. And you see like the way that Chiefs fans love Patrick Mahomes, the way Chiefs fans like love Andy Reid, and this dynasty that we are watching right now is so effing cool, man. Like it's so fun to watch a great player lift an organization, and an organization. And by the way, this organization made some missteps because this wide receiver core sucks. And we'll see if they actually are able to address it in the offseason. But at the end of the day, that organization and Patrick Mahomes are going to work together, and they are going to improve on a Super Bowl caliber team, a Super Bowl winning team, a champion. And I'm really fascinated by how they do that, and whatever it is that they wind up doing. Um, we'll see what position it puts Patrick Mahomes in. But as that's all taking place, I can't help but wonder if we're kind of watching the other side of that coin here, where the Lakers are just kind of doing whatever they can to ride this LeBron wave until it reaches the shore, and maintain whatever assets they can for their next wave. All right, in the week ahead, it's a fun one, right? The Lakers don't play again until Tuesday, so you do get to continue to kind of exhale here. You have a very winnable game against Detroit that Tuesday. You have a another winnable game heading into your All-Star break, against Utah. That is at Utah. Utah played better basketball, but then traded Kelly Olynyk and traded Fontecchio. And we saw what happened to them last year after they competed as well as they could, and then sold pieces and then fell off the second half of the year. So you kind of feel like the Lakers going into that trade deadline, or not the trade deadline, the All-Star break, you have 2 games between then and now. And then in that All-Star break, everybody gets a nice little opportunity to rest and recuperate. And in Spencer Dinwiddie's case, continue to learn about what the Lakers need from him. And in Darvin Ham and that coaching staff's case, learn what rotation makes the most sense for everybody there. It's kind of a good spot here that the Lakers find themselves in, before a critical break. And then obviously on the other side of it, you have a sprint to the finish, and we'll see what that sprint looks like, and who is even involved in it, right? To bring this conversation full circle back to the topic of, are the Lakers going to continue to add to their roster? We'll see who all is involved in all of this, and we'll see what the Lakers are capable of, now that they do get a nice little injection, a kind of miraculous injection of talent into the roster. Spencer, like, I looked at a lot of tape over the weekend. I looked at a lot of numbers. There are ways that I think the Lakers can utilize him that would allow him to be an addition to this roster. I think there are also some concerns there, right? That Darvin Ham would go back to bad habits and play a little too much of those 3-man lineups, or too many minutes with those 3-man lineups. You're going to get some of them. That's just how this is, that's how this is going to play out to a certain extent. But is there a way to, and is there a way to build those lineups where you actually get to take advantage of the extra skills that are on the court, right? So last year, the Lakers would go really, really small, but they couldn't really shoot, and they weren't super skillful, and you were just small, and you lost those minutes by a lot. But in this case, Dinwiddie's a little taller, right? So he can operate as your shooting guard, or a really small forward, depending on who you're competing against. Austin, D'Lo can both shoot the rock. LeBron, given the way that he has played this year, also is shooting the ball really well. So he'll allow you to do some things. Like, I bet you at some point we're going to get an Austin, D'Lo, Spencer, LeBron AD lineup. Like, it's going to happen. And there are some concerns about it, especially defensively on the perimeter. But I'm also curious what that would look like offensively, where you have just so much creativity. You have AD as like the ultimate nail in those lineups. I would also like to make sure that AD continues to operate as a facilitator. The Lakers have been really, really good in games that he dishes out at least 6 assists this year, and I think that's a trend that needs to continue here for the rest of this year, even though you added another creator to this roster. And then we'll continue to keep an eye out for Jared Vanderbilt news. Keep an eye out for Gabe Vincent news, and we will keep an eye out for how the rest of the season is going to play out. And I think it's a really exciting second half of the season that is to come. So make sure you guys are subscribed here on YouTube. Make sure you guys are subscribed wherever it is that you get your podcasts. And let's continue to ride this thing until it comes time to kind of find out, or we do start to find out what this team looks like, or what this team is actually capable of for the second half of the year. Before we go, I want to take some time out here to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for the way that you guys have supported this channel and this podcast and my content over the last few weeks. Substack, my audience doubled. Um, YouTube, our audience basically tripled. Uh, my Twitter following, I've gained about 3,000 followers in the last couple of weeks. And as this thing continues to grow, and if I, if a couple things also go our way, we'll be able to reinvest into this podcast. And I have some really cool ideas on how I would like to do that. And there are some people that I would like to invest to making an official part of this podcast here moving forward. So we got to keep on building this thing. Tell your friends about the show. Share clips when they appear on your social feeds, and continue to listen and subscribe and rate and review and like videos, whatever it is. However it is that you can help, all of that stuff does go a long way in continuing to build this thing. And we are in a really cool spot here for what we are all potentially capable of here. Just like the Lakers, right? The Lakers are actually do have an opportunity ahead of them if a few things go their way. And I think we're in kind of a similar spot where we have a ton of upside, and all we need is just a little bit of support and your continued support. And if you guys keep, running out and supporting us the way that you guys have the last few weeks, man, the sky is the limit. So thank you, like legitimately, thank you so much for continuing to show people that you can do this. Like if you have the right people behind you, and you get the attention of the right kind of audience, you are really capable of some cool things. And I truly feel like we are too. All right, that is going to do it here for this episode of the Lakers Lowdown. Thank you a ton for following and listening and all of those things. Please do subscribe if you haven't already, whether it's on YouTube and or the podcast feed. Hit that like button if you guys are watching here on YouTube. Rate and review if you guys are listening on a podcast application, wherever it is, preferably Odyssey. And yeah, until the next time you guys hear from me, which will be tomorrow, I'm Anthony Irwin saying have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you then.